What's going on? Welcome back to Financial Journey. So today we're going to talk to you about Polestar. I want to go over some of the current data points, what's been coming out associated to the company, and go over everything else you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up. And with that said, let's get right to it. So right now, Polestar seems to be the only stock in the market, for the most part, that is green. It is up 1.37%. Market's been open about 30 minutes so far, and 425,000 shares have been traded. 2.1 is the average. So still a little bit low, so most likely it is going to be below the average today, but beside the point, definitely fairly good. Yesterday though was a very vicious sell-off. So a lot of things is happening. So today it is up largely because of a new analyst rating. And so it does show it came out yesterday, but was unveiled early this morning. But ultimately Dan did give a $2 price target. Dan from Barclays, who has a 45% success rating, again gave, like I said, a $2 price target. So even though that isn't all that great, it is higher than what we currently are at. So obviously with a $1.48, that's somewhat optimistic about the foreseeable future. So the market's taking that as a good positive. The rest of the EVs and everyone else is getting slaughtered today. And this rating was in response to their recent numbers that they just put out. So as you can kind of see, yesterday they said that they did deliver 7,200 vehicles in Q1, 1,200 of which were Polestar 4. So I think that aspect is okay, but 7,200, when I saw that yesterday, I was just shaking my head. That is just the crappiest results. I feel like even the bear side of the broader market, Wall Street, was assuming at least 13,000. In my case, I didn't do a video, but I did kind of make note of it. I was anticipating 18,000. So this is just absolutely horrific. And even to make things somewhat worse, I think a lot of people did realize that dilution was coming, but it looks like they got another 950 revolving line of credit. Looks like they're hitting up international banks right now, so not necessarily the syndicate of banks as what's been really helping the broader EV market. So it's just a very interesting scenario. They did go over, I guess, the new structure where Geely owns 24%, Volvo 18%, and they do say that they are welcoming new shareholders as their free float did increase. And that's something I did bring up yesterday, essentially how there's going to be a lot more liquidity now in the broader market. And no doubtably that is why the volume is a little bit higher. But in my opinion, like they definitely have to hit a home run during their upcoming earnings, which is slated for, I believe it was May the 9th, if I remember correctly. Yeah, Thursday, May the 9th. So they definitely do need to kind of get their crap together and not come off as timid, because this is a very shitty result in a market right now that is very much relentless. So EVs are getting slaughtered right now. Polestar, like I said, is doing somewhat okay, but I still think bigger picture, there's more downside coming. That's just my own interpretation. Of course, I could be very much wrong on that. But surprisingly, though, shorts haven't been doubling down on Polestar over this last little bit. So even getting rid of all this unnecessary stuff right here, you do see roughly about 10.74% recently in March was kind of the all-time high essentially. So hasn't really been doing all that much. It's just been stagnant. For instance, even today, they're increasing 18,000 shares despite the blood in the market. So no doubtably, they could easily double down. Probably the cost to borrow average is, or the cost to borrow is the restricting factor that's not really allowing shorts to increase, because cost to borrow average is 144.4%. Utilization is 99.43, short score is 92.51, and overall 25.69 million shares overall are being shorted. So like I've said in the past, Polestar, technically, if you remove their name and everything, they are a squeeze play based on all of these fundamentals. Just the only thing that they have been massively messing up on, or not really doing, is putting out a surprise catalyst. If anything, they're just putting out more crappy news. And so, of course, that's just giving shorts a lot more ammunition. So it's really a unfortunate scenario that Polestar is in, because I really did like Polestar like massively. I loved the production. I loved the fact that they were really investing in technology, because that's one thing that I was more hesitant on initially with Polestar, is just the lack of technology, but they've been investing quite a lot of money in that. So I think Polestar does have a good future, especially with Geely. Like, they'll be able to really save them for the most part, but clearly it hasn't really stopped the stock price from plummeting, because even looking over here over this last little bit, so Polestar over this last 1 year is down 60.34%. Even just 2024 is down 33.85%. So this is a slippery slope, because if it does get close to $1, which given the trajectory of the stock price will be probably by the second half of 2024, that's again a bear scenario on that, then in reality, that's where Polestar will need to do a reverse stock split and everything else. Like I said, I think today it's having somewhat of a nice recovery, but whether it holds or not, we'll just have to wait and see, because big money isn't really getting into Polestar. So these are some of the transactions that have occurred on the secondary market above $100,000. So it looks like the last one was on April the 10th. So big money still is not really looking at Polestar. And that's something I said for a while now that is very discouraging. The fact that Polestar is getting somewhat good results, because even comparing, for instance, Polestar to Lucid, I know different target markets and whatnot, but in reality, like Lucid's full 2024 production target, or delivery target, sorry, is 9,000. So they did equivalently almost that in 1 quarter. So it's just the appropriate valuations just are not there. And like I've pointed out, the PS ratio comparing Polestar to Lucid is just night and day. I'll give you a quick overview of what I mean by that. So just pulling up Polestar right here. So Polestar, the PS ratio on the multiples is very, very low. So 1.1, the future is 0.8. That is crazy. The fact that it's 0.8, that means there is no hope for the future, no optimism. And just to put it in comparison, so Lucid right here, same fashion, looking at the multiples. So the PS ratio for Lucid is 9.7 and the future is 7.3. So the market is clearly appreciating Lucid so much more than Polestar, despite the lack of production and many things like that. So it is very discouraging to see, in my opinion. But beside the point, looking at options, $6,300 in calls, 16,000 in puts. Sentiment wise, though, 60% of all the options being done so far this morning is bullish. So that's somewhat optimistic, if that makes sense. But still, of the call options that are being purchased, it looks like there's a consensus for it to be over $2 by October the 18th. So hopefully that does come true. Of course, looking at puts, though, you do see virtually no money getting into Polestar. So it really just sucks, both on common stock as well as just options. Just it's not getting the attention that I feel like it does truly deserve. But right now, with it at $1.49 and change, it is trading between this S1 and the pivot. So as of right now, this $1.47 is a very strong support. In fact, it did bounce off of that slightly, so you'll want to watch for that to hold. I do not anticipate under any circumstances this pivot point to be touched today, or whether it be early next week. So most likely it's just going to be orienting down. You just want to watch again this kind of S1 to hold. If not, then it is going to be going back to this range, so this S2 to this S1, so $1.32, which ultimately will be a kind of equivalent new 52-week and all-time low for Polestar. So things aren't looking good, like I said, and it is just a couple steps away from that $1 mark. Right now on the actual chart itself, it is lower percentile of the Bollinger Band. Looking on stochastic, you do see it at 20, so it is considered oversold. But despite that, though, you do see a bearish deviation, so red line above the white. So of course, I think just the sentiment isn't really there. Number of retail investors surprisingly are buying the dip with Polestar. So maybe that's one of the attributing factors why it's going up. So I don't know why. Maybe they do see some value. They really like the analyst rating. I'm not really sure. Let me know your thoughts on that in the comments below, and give yourself a shout out if you have been buying Polestar, if you have been selling. What have you been doing with Polestar? On a side note, especially with their earnings right around the corner now, I have been monitoring as well just to see if any analysts have been changing any of their estimates for instance, earnings per share or revenue. So right now, negative 15 cents is still the status quo among the 3 analysts. So no real change for that. And then for revenue, there is a new analyst that did jump on board. So it went from 3 to 4, but it was rather bearish. So this is why the revenue did go from 816 to 759.26 million for the Q4 revenue. So let me know your thoughts on that in the comments below. Give yourself a shout out. Have you been buying? Have you been selling? What have you been doing? Also, on a side note, if you are looking for a lot of good compiled information, such as everything that I mentioned, analyst ratings, forecasts, even the latest Morningstar reports, which does show the fair market value being $2.36. I believe it's shown that for a while now based off of just their assets. So maybe it's not factoring in something, or maybe the inventory. I'm not really sure. But beside the point, if you're looking for a lot of good information, take a look at Interactive Brokers for all of this information to be completely free. Link in the description below and also the comments. But with all that said, appreciate all of you watching.